Okay, looks like we are live here. Training Cafe is open for business. Today we'll be answering your questions, and I see a bunch of great questions typed in already into the comments box. And so I'll get to all of those, plus hopefully more as they come in here during this live stream. For those of you that are new, this is something I began doing last spring, I guess in March, when the first COVID lockdown occurred around the world. I was looking for a way to, have a bit of an outlet being locked in at home here. And I thought, let's make some lemonade out of lemons, out of the lemons that COVID has dealt us all. And so Training Cafe was born. I've been doing these 2 Mondays a month ever since, and the feedback has been tremendous, and it seems we have more viewers tuning in. And of course, I invite you to spread the word with your friends if they're looking for some training talk to listen to, maybe while they're working out or driving or studying or whatnot. A 30 to 60 minute episode of Training Cafe is a good way to learn. From a veteran, I've been doing this a long time, climbing for 44 years, coaching climbing, writing, studying about climbing for 34 years. While there's a growing number of quality coaches and experts, around the world, none really has been doing it as long as I have, as many years, and probably none have written as much as I have in terms of books and web articles and magazine articles, which I've been doing since the late 1980s. Some of you might not have even been born yet in the late 1980s. So, there's a bit of a background on me. My website is trainingforclimbing.com, and you can follow me on Instagram. I have a personal Instagram and a Training for Climbing Instagram, and a @PhysiVantage Instagram, which is my nutrition company. And so if you can't get enough of climbing and training talk, then you can follow me in any number of areas. Of course, we begin each episode of Training Cafe with coffee. Let's commune together. In the spirit of climbing and training for climbing, I toast you. And that's kind of what it's all about. I'm passionate about coffee. I'm passionate about climbing. And of course, climbing and coffee go together pretty well. This is kind of a fun time we share each episode together. This episode's shout out goes to Jonathan Segrist, an American climber, also known as J-Star, who did the first ascent of a long-standing project at one of my home climbing areas. The project was bolted 15 or 20 years ago. It's resisted the efforts of some of the best climbers in the world as they've come through and given it a try or two. And Jonathan worked on it, I guess, for 8 days and ended up sending the rig. The route is called Full Metal Brisket, and it is the New River Gorge's first 515A route. And the New River Gorge is an area that I have been intimately involved with since I first went there in 1986. And I was really a developer there for about a decade, put up 200 first ascents. I put up the first 513A route at the New River Gorge, the first 7C plus route back in October of 1987, a route called Diamond Life. And so that first 13A at the New River Gorge that I authored in 87 was followed by the first 14A by Brian McRae in the late 90s, Proper Soul. And now here in 2020, Jonathan Segrist put up the first 15A. So we went from 13A to 15A. It took 33 years. Now, the New River Gorge isn't quite on the cutting edge. Of course, there's been other areas that have reached those grades much sooner. But for here in the eastern United States, the New River Gorge is one of the leading areas. And it's great to finally have a route, a 9A plus, a 515A route at the New River Gorge. Actually, it's at Summersville Lake, but it's the New River Gorge region, and people kind of, conflate and combine the two into one large area. So that's the shout out for this episode. Two announcements before we get to your questions. The first announcement is I will be participating in an event in January that you may have interest in. It's an online coaching event. You may see on social media this banner. I will share it out this week a couple of times. PCC is Performance Climbing Coach, and this is a virtual summit. There's, I guess, around a dozen coaches that are participating in, as presenters. I'll be doing a talk on energy system training and give you my latest thoughts on that. It's something I've written about and studied extensively over the last 5 years. So that'll be the focus of my presentation. Other top presenters, Steve Bechtel, who's actually one of the organizers, Tyler Nelson, a chiropractor, a doctor from Salt Lake City. You're probably familiar with him from social media. Chris Hampton from Power Company, Dr. Vaji, a climbing-oriented doctor from California, and many others will be also providing recorded events, presentations, kind of a lecture type presentation, which is how most of these presentations will feel, I believe. And so you'll be able to watch them kind of as modules, each around an hour or so long. And so you can watch them all in one day if you really wanted to binge, or you could spread them out over a week and view the modules beginning in January. And then I think at the end of January, there will be an event where it'll be kind of a live discussion or question and answer. And, so then, people who have signed up for the course can come in into like a group Zoom type setting and ask questions and hear questions and answers that are intended to follow up on the presentation. So you want to check out that event. If you go to Instagram, there's actually an account for Performance Climbing Coach. You could go directly to there, and there'll be a link to sign up for this virtual event. And of course, we hope to have participants from around the world joining us. And I know we have a lot of them here on this video each time. Of course, we're now heading into winter in the Northern Hemisphere. Unfortunately, there's another uptick in COVID cases. Parts of the country, parts of the world are on lockdown again. California just started a 3-week lockdown in the big cities. So obviously the climbing gyms are closed out there. But I just heard from Tom Randall in the UK and said their lockdown is over and they're getting to open up. And so that's good news for those folks. And so each country and each United State is in a little different situation. Here in Pennsylvania, we're in a quasi lockdown. People are still going about their everyday life, but a lot of restaurants and such aren't quite available at this time. Climbing gyms, like in Philadelphia, the one in downtown is closed, but the one in the suburbs is open. And I imagine that's how it is in a lot of parts of the country and perhaps around the world as well. We're heading into training season, so we're kind of going back to that situation where if your gym is closed, you're going to be training hopefully at home to be able to maintain or maybe even train things up to the next level heading into next year. And hopefully tuning into Training Café is a source of motivation and quality instruction for you each and every time, and to help you continue to elevate your game. I'm fond of saying if you're training this winter the same way you did last winter, then you're probably not training effectively, because you're either growing and progressing and getting better, or you're dying and getting worse. There's really no in between. And so it's important that we are constantly reevaluating ourselves and trying to figure out, what is the weak link in the chain when it comes to our climbing performance, and how can I readjust the training program for an even better future. And that's beyond the scope of this Training Café. Maybe we'll do around New Year's a Training Café that talks about how to kind of adjust your program for the better going forward. The last Training Café, I kind of talked about this holiday period between, from the end of November through New Year's, where It's easy because of holiday events. Now they're going to be not quite the same this year because of COVID, but it's a busy time of the year, and people tend to maybe take a month off from training, which isn't a bad idea mentally, but physically, if you just stop training for a month, you backtrack quite a bit. Not so much in the first week or two, but week 3 and 4 that you do begin to lose endurance and strength and power, and probably put on some weight if you stop your training cold turkey. And so go back and listen to that last Training Cafe. And actually, I just released a podcast on kind of the same topic. If you go to iTunes and search Eric Hurst Training for Climbing podcast, you can tune in to what is basically a monthly training lecture that I give. And I'm up to like podcast 55 because I've been doing this for years. And so there's a lot of great content there if you haven't discovered it just yet. Okay, and then the second announcement is, if you're wondering what good coffee I'm drinking right now, it is actually Send Blend. It's a special roast that I commissioned from a veteran roaster, a climber who started a roasting company in the Pacific Northwest about 30 years ago. And yeah, so veteran roasters developed this medium roast coffee. I like to say it's smooth and balanced, just like you're climbing. And in any case, we have this available on the Fizzy Vantage store. And we have a giveaway. If you want to potentially win a free pound or a gift box of Send Blend, go to the @FizzyVantage Instagram account. And there's a post that just went up this morning that tells you to tag 2 friends and like Fizzy Vantage, and we will enter you in the raffle. Now, the winner of the raffle needs to be in the United States, because we're not going to ship this to the other side of the world. It would cost twice as much as the coffee to do that. So unfortunately, though we love all of our international customers and viewers, this giveaway offer is only for folks living in the United States. So if that's you, if you love coffee, go to @FizzyVantage and get in on the raffle that will run through Thursday, and then we'll pick a winner Thursday night and announce it on Friday. Okay, so enough with the small talk. Let's get to some questions here. And let me just scroll up. I see Neil saying it's great to be watching Training Cafe while having a training session. So yes, I'm happy to provide the motivation, Neil. Okay, first up, advice on gaining confidence on crimping again. Had a minor pulley injury 8 months ago. Currently no pain, but still feeling aware that things might not be quite right, and says that makes him a bail on some climbs. Yeah, and that is a smart way to go about things. If the injury was 8 months ago, it's probably mostly healed, but sometimes you can feel where the pulley injury was kind of like a little thickening of the ligament. The pulleys are ligaments, and when they form scar tissue and thicken up, sometimes it can almost feel like there's a little grain of rice under there, like a little lump. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You've laid down collagen. If you've been gradually adding loading through your recovery period, there's been enough signal to hopefully get the collagen aligned. The last thing you want to do in these types of situations, these injuries, is just stop all loading of your tendons and ligaments for a long period of time. Yes, the first week after you've injured it, you may want to ice it. You might want to take some anti-inflammatories, and you don't want to load it when it's acute. But once you get past that acute phase, maybe in a week or 10 days, you want to begin some modest loading of the injured tissues, provide the tenocytes, the cells that extrude and collagen, the signal to do their thing and to properly align. And then you gradually, return to climbing and return to loading, and taping it can help you be aware. It's debatable whether it actually aids the pulley at all. Pulley splints are helpful in the early stages if you have access to a pulley splint. But after several months of returning the loading, there will be enough strength there to begin climbing pretty much full force at your limit, as it sounds like you might be doing. But still, you need to be aware if there's a hold that feels injurious, that kind of scares you, you kind of get that intuitive sense, oh, this hold could be a problem for that recovering finger, then take, and back off the route. No route is worth getting injured over. And so, you are kind of in that situation, Jim, that it sounds like you're acting smartly, and you can, begin, doing more hangboard training and do max hangs. I would probably tape that injured finger even for a full year after the injury. I think just for awareness, and maybe if you tape it really tight, if you have a good, like that European loical tape that does not stretch, you can get a taping that might deload the tendon a tiny bit. The tapes available here in America are terrible. They stretch, and you can tape it, and then after the first set of hangs or the first climb, it's stretched out and provides no benefit other than skin protection and a little bit of awareness, but it's not helping the tendons at all. So gradually keep increasing the loading, but avoid things that you kind of intuit might be injurious. Okay. How are you and how's your family? Family's doing good. We're all healthy. None of us have had a run-in with COVID personally, so that's good that we know some folks who have, but we've dodged the bullet. We're taking our vitamin D every day, which there's increasing evidence that, people that have a higher vitamin D level in their bloodstream are perhaps more resistant to COVID. There's actually published papers on that now. And so it's a good reason to supplement vitamin D. And even without COVID, I think vitamin D is one of those vitamins that most people should be supplementing, and athletes should be supplementing. So yeah, we're staying healthy. What is something you would like to ask us? Well, I don't know. Are my Training Cafe videos too long? There's a question for you. Yeah, I mean, I welcome your feedback and your thoughts, and that's how I can make Training Cafe better each and every time, as I'm keen on getting feedback, constructive and positive as well. Question on strength training: can I train raw strength like pull-ups with heavy weights, along with more explosive strength exercises like fast pull-ups? Maybe, like campus training, plyometric or reactive type exercises. And yes, advanced climbers can actually do those two in the same workout. It's actually a very beneficial thing. There's a training concept called complex training, where you couple a heavy load exercise like a weighted pull-up, or if you're leg training, like a squat or a deadlift, and you couple it with a fast, explosive exercise. In the case of climbing, it could be a pull-up, 5 pull-ups as fast as you can, or it could be a lap on the campus board. Or in the case of the leg trainer who's deadlifting, you would do the deadlift, and then you would do some plyometric jumps or some sprints. And so coupling high load exercises, which by their nature are very slow, with no load exercises like campus training or plyometric jumping that are fast, it's a novel stimulus that elite climbers can put together. And that's how we train in our house, my sons and I. We do that regularly on our max strength and power days. Now, if you're an intermediate climber, then probably you don't want to couple them in that way, and maybe want to do them as separate workouts. But for a well-trained athlete, someone who is more advanced, you could actually do them together. And always do the high-load exercise first. It gets warmed up and turned on and has a potentiating effect in terms of recruitment. And then after you do a few sets of weighted hangs or weighted pull-ups, you go to, rest a few minutes and go to your campus board. You will feel surprisingly light and powerful because you've fully turned on, or largely turned on, high number of motor units, and kind of got things synchronized and hopping and ready to go. And so you can have perhaps one of your better campus board workouts after you've done the weighted hangs and the weighted pull-ups. So there's kind of an elite level technique. Probably not something you would do if you're in your first few years of training for climbing. Again, a beginner shouldn't even really be doing any weighted hangs or any campus boards. You got to develop all of your, stabilizer muscles and postural muscles, your scapular stabilizers, your rotator cuff. You should climb mostly the first couple of years and then gradually add in things like some body weight hangboard and eventually some weighted pull-ups as you get stronger. And, so you need to take it one step at a time and not rush the process. The climber in the first year who rushes to do advanced training and maybe gets really good fast, maybe they are doing V8 or 512 in their first year or two of climbing, they might feel they're capable of doing the elite training because they got good so fast, but their connective tissues haven't had time to adapt as fast as their skill has developed or as fast as their muscles have developed. And that's when you get these injuries, elbow tendinosis or, other tendinopathies, maybe a shoulder injury, maybe a pulley tweak. And so be careful. Think about the long arc of your climbing career, that you will continue to improve if you stay uninjured and stay motivated for many years or decades. And so if you just try to rush into advanced training too soon, it's not often a happy ending. Okay, cold exposure or shower after climbing or on rest days, what are your thoughts? He says one study suggests it might dampen strength gains and hypertrophy, but benefit short-term recovery. Absolutely right. You've answered your own question. That is exactly what the research shows. I get a lot of questions about that. A couple of years ago, these tanks, cold tank immersions became a big thing in the big cities. You could have yourself, submerged into a tank except for your head after a hard workout. It's the modern version of the old school ice bath, which has been often used in sports like football. Let's say you get into an ice bath after a game. And kind of the bottom line on those things is that if you've done a lot of damage to your body in a competitive situation like a football game, or maybe you just spent 24 hours on a big wall, like you did a one-day ascent of El Cap, you did something really, really brutal. The ice bath can be a smart thing to do to suppress some inflammation and help that short-term recovery. However, as a regular thing you would use once or twice a week after your training, not a good idea, because it does suppress the signals that result in the adaptations you're after. Remember, it's not the workout that makes you stronger. It's the signals that the training produces or imparts. You have, the workout and then the signal it provides throughout your body, chemically, in terms of the nervous system. And if you suppress those signals by taking a lot of ibuprofen every day or doing the ice bath or other things, then you are weakening the signal. You're damping the signal and therefore not getting as much out of your workouts. I talked a few episodes ago about how 20, 30 years ago, the big thing in sports, with runners, let's say, was to take mega doses of vitamin C and vitamin E, these antioxidants, thinking that would be a good thing. And now all these years later, the studies are pretty conclusive that mega dosing antioxidants is a bad thing because, again, it suppresses some of those after effects from the workout that you want to signal an adaptation in your body to make you better at running or climbing and pulling and whatnot. And so, kind of the bottom line is, every now and then, after a brutal workout or some arduous event that your body's just wrecked from, the ice bath would probably not be a bad idea. But as a regular occurrence, don't recommend it. Now, 5 minutes in a cold shower isn't going to give you enough of an effect, but you get an ice bath, 32 degrees, 0 Celsius, you get into one of those tanks, then you're somewhat erasing the workout that you did. And so that's not a very smart thing to do. By the way, and don't want to go off topic here, but I'm a big fan of sauna use for various reasons. I have a sauna in my garage that I need to start using more. I tend to use it more during the off season, and during the winter, it feels good to be in a dry sauna, and the effects are multiple in terms of circulation, recovery, making of heat shock proteins, potentially beneficial for mitochondria function, especially older people. There's some good evidence that it is healthful in addition to being potentially ergogenic. Question about sewing machine leg or saw machine leg. When you get on a foothold and your leg begins to jiggle, what can you do strength or endurance training wise to maybe reduce that? And I'm not sure that there's any training exercise so much that would prevent you from getting that. My perception is that it's more a result of an inadequate warm-up and being a little bit too tight as you climb. I think doing a slower, more progressive warm-up and doing some dynamic stretching as part of that process may reduce the chance that you'll get that sewing machine leg on a route. I think, though, also it is kind of, you don't see it in expert climbers very often. You do see it more in newer climbers, their first few years. And I think some of it might be an expert climber is more relaxed as they climb. They tighten down and get stiff for the moves that they need that tension, that core tension. But then when they're on easier moves where they can be more fluid and more flowy, they are able to reduce their tension. And that ability to modulate tension throughout your body is one of those master skills that climbers develop that in the early days you don't have. In the early days, as you are learning to climb and you get on a route near your limit, you start to tighten down all of your muscles when things get hard. You get more mechanical as a result. You waste a lot of energy as a result. And part of that energy leak is, I believe, like the sewing machine leg that can develop, where you're just too tight through and through, and maybe as a precursor to beginning to cramp or spasm, you begin to shake a little bit. And so I think it's something that you will work through with expertise and more years of climbing, learning to adjust your, become more aware of your tension throughout your body as you climb. I like to tell, coach people that when you're on a route, to do a tension check. Every time you hit kind of a good hold where you can pause, maybe shake up, do a quick tension check. Like, do I feel tight through my neck and shoulders and back and core, or legs and hips? Are you overly tight to kind of brace and protect yourself? And if so, take a few deep breaths and kind of feel a wave of relaxation wash over your body. And if you do that tension check every time you're at a clip on a route, or every time you're at a better hold where you can pause for a moment and chalk up, do a quick tension check, take a deep breath, feel that wave of relaxation wash over your body, you will quickly begin to overcome those signals that eventually lead you to shaking and getting sewing machine leg. Okay, myth avatar. Question about deadlifting to strengthen the lower back. How much do you think a climber should be able to deadlift? Is body weight enough? Okay, well, I've been one of those people that's promoted deadlifting in recent years. Not that you get onto some crazy weightlifting program that bulks you up, but I think um, small amounts of weightlifting can be helpful if you can get on a program that doesn't result in hypertrophy and added body weight. Because climbing is a strength to weight ratio sport. You want to get stronger and try to keep your body weight stable, optimal. And so if you get on a weightlifting program that is adding weight, especially in the wrong places, like on your legs and hips, even potentially if your shoulders and pecs got too big, that would be counterproductive. And so I've heard some coaches falsely say that, oh, well, if you put on weight from weightlifting, your body is stronger. It can handle the weight. And that's totally false when you apply it to climbing, because the limiting, when you get on steep routes, it's your finger flexor muscles that are the most limiting constraint. And so adding bulk throughout your body elsewhere doesn't make your forearms stronger, yet the forearms have to carry that weight up an overhanging route or overhanging boulder. And so it's a big mistake to bulk up in those areas. In any case, the strategy for deadlifting is to do a light warm-up set of 7 or 8 reps. In my case, I do 135 pounds as my warm-up set. I weigh about 160 pounds. Now, I've been deadlifting for years. If you're beginning to deadlift, would be substantially less. Maybe begin at half your body weight and do 7 or 8 reps. And by the way, deadlifting is kind of a technical lift. You need to have proper form. So research that, go to YouTube and look at a few videos to get some basic instruction on how to deadlift with proper form so you don't hurt your back. And you develop the right muscles that you really want to. Your posterior chain, that's what is getting trained. Your spinal erectors and your glute and your hamstrings all work pretty hard. And those are muscles that provide stiffness on overhanging routes. And that's why deadlifting can really help. It's kind of, you think of it as being your posterior core. People do all this ab training for anterior core, things like crunches and leg curls and things that work the hip flexors and abdominals. And they overlook the posterior chain. And that's where there's a variety of exercises you can do for the posterior chain, but one of them is deadlifting. So in any case, a warm-up set, very lightweight, 7 or 8 reps, and then take the weight up, maybe 20 pounds and do a set of 5, and then take it up another 20 pounds and do a set of 3 or 4, and that's it. So we're talking about 3 sets. You're not doing like a bodybuilder's program. A bodybuilder program would be doing like 4 sets of 10 reps. Or maybe even 12 or 15 reps. And those sets that become lactic, they become pumpy, your muscles begin to burn. That is a signal for hypertrophy, and you don't want that. So by keeping the reps low, basically if you're doing 3 to 5 rep sets, you will power out, not pump out. And that's the signal you want for, more nervous system type adaptations that will make you stronger without putting much weight on. Maybe you'll put on a pound or 2. And if you do this type of training, say during the off season, and put on a pound or 2, it's no big deal because it's the off season. And then what you do when you go into your performance season is you stop your deadlifting. And if you did put on a pound or 2, it will go away in a short period of time, but you will to some degree maintain those neurological adaptations. So you'll still kind of have the strength, but you'll lose a little bit of the weight gain. Glycogen that stores in those muscles, like in your hamstring, will reduce, and you'll get your strength back. In terms of a weight to work up to, I would say at the absolute limit, 2 times body weight. A couple of years ago, I built up to doing around 310 or 320 pounds on a deadlift. That's a 1 rep deadlift. And it's not really essential that I needed to do that. It was more just kind of can me as an older guy in my 50s still deadlift over 300? And the answer was yes, but it also felt like I was on the verge of potentially injury. And so I just thought the risk was greater than the reward doing that type of thing. And now I do that set of 135. I do a set of 155 for 5 reps, and then I do 175 for 3 reps, and that's it. And I do that twice a week during my kind of off-season training. And then when I get into my performance season, I just stop the deadlifting. So that's kind of what I would recommend for people that, again, have the instruction or the knowledge to deadlift with proper form. But don't go down the rabbit hole of getting onto some crazy deadlifting or bodybuilding program. You don't want to go there. Okay. Enough said. Let's move on here. Question is, I easily strain muscles in the very top of my shoulders and neck, upper trapezius area with pain radiating throughout my neck. And how can I best strengthen this muscle? Well, could be a lot of things going on when you get up here around the neck. Belayer's neck, if you're looking up, belaying people a lot, that can contribute to tightness and injury, certainly pain. Getting some belay glasses is a good investment and can really help that. Sitting at a computer all day with your head kind of fixed in one position, I know that causes tightness in my neck. Climbers, because we do a lot of pulling, tend to not develop that upper trapezius. And so my answer to you is, doing some strengthening exercises would be a good idea, but I think even more important is some stretching exercises. If you take one arm and put it behind your back and even grab onto something like I'm grabbing the chair behind me, and then take your other hand and pull your head the opposite way gently, I get a nice stretch through my neck muscles down into my upper trap. And I'll often do this at the crag, and then you want to, of course, switch sides. And I'll often do this at the crag, between routes if I'm belaying and if I am looking up and don't have belay glasses on. I do tend to have chronic tightness. Now, because I deadlift strengthens upper trapezius. If you have some dumbbells, you could do some shrugging to train the upper trapezius, doing some dumbbell shoulder press. Again, you don't want to do a bodybuilding shoulder press program, but some lighter weights. I use 2 20-pound dumbbells and do, one set of 15 twice a week just to train that. I do it at the same time I work my rotator cuff muscles. And those types of things can strengthen the upper trapezius. You could do some sling trainer exercises like Ys and Ts that could help as well. Very good exercises for climbers to train all the scapular stabilizers all the way around. And that's something I've done a couple of videos on over the years, and you should research. And really, I recommend doing year-round some modest training of the scapular stabilizers, the rotator cuff muscles, and the stretching. You can do the stretching every single day, and that may go a long way to alleviating some of your problems. Next question about supplements. What do I recommend, or what am I using? Type, quality, reason. Okay, well, first of all, I obviously the products that I developed for PhysiVantage our supercharged collagen and our weapons grade whey protein and our Endurex pre-workout, pre-performance supplement to increase the oxidative flux. All of those products I developed really for myself and for my family and for my client. They date back several years when I looked at the research and said, I'm going to develop some stuff from scratch because there was nothing made for climbers to the specific needs of climbers. And so from scratch, I developed these products to benefit my sons, who are both, badass high-end climbers for their age, and the clients I work with, and other people nearby me. And then the supplements were great, and we liked what they did and said, we need to be able to make these available to climbers around the country and around the world. And so I launched PhysiVantage 2 years ago. and the rest is history. The company is growing rapidly, and we hope to have distribution in Canada and in Europe in early 2021. Other supplements that I take, I mentioned earlier, vitamin D. I do take 200 IUs, I'm sorry, 2,000 IUs every day. I take fish oil, 2 or 3 of those every day. What else do I take? I take some supplemental magnesium. I prefer magnesium malate. And that's about it. I will occasionally take some methylfolate or B12, though I don't take it every single day. I guess that's about it. I have experimented with many supplements over the years. It's a topic I've studied extensively. And, the fact is, a lot of the supplements out there are snake oil. They have no research basis behind them, just marketing. The ones that do have research behind them, the research might be misapplied. A common one there is beta-alanine, which I believe is a beneficial supplement for climbers if you take it daily. The beta-alanine stores in your body inside the cell, and it serves as a first line of defense against acidosis that occurs from anaerobic glycolysis. And so if you're taking it daily for a month, you can build up enough inside the cells to reduce that first bit of acidosis when you get on a very powerful route and get pumped. It slows the drop in pH inside the cell and therefore allows anaerobic glycolysis to occur a little longer before it begins to self-destruct. Now, I mentioned misapplied. Some pre-workout supplements have beta-alanine in there, as if it has some acute effect if you take it before a workout. And it absolutely does not. Not in the way like caffeine would. Some people find caffeine is a beneficial supplement pre-workout, pre-climb. Other people find it makes them jittery, and it's not the right supplement for them. But my point is, caffeine has an acute effect. Beta-alanine, it shouldn't even be in a pre-workout because it has no effect taking that dose right before you work out. It's what you've taken in the prior 30 days that matters in terms of storing inside of the cell. And so beta-alanine is something you have to take every single day, at least 5 grams, perhaps as much as 10 grams, split into several doses throughout the day. And so that's what I'm saying. The nutrition industry, many products say, oh, this pre-workout is beta-alanine, as if it's going to make a difference, and it doesn't. The difference is the caffeine that is making you feel charged, but it's really not doing anything to enhance performance other than kind of being a central nervous system stimulant. The beta-alanine you need to take every single day and load it, kind of like how creatine needs to be loaded over a period of time. Now, the difference between beta-alanine and creatine, and they're completely different supplements, is creatine stores with water and it volumizes the cell, makes it heavier, makes your muscles heavier, bulkier, and actually as the cells swell, occlude blood flow in the capillaries. And in a sport like climbing, which is a strength endurance sport, actually pumps you out faster. So creatine beyond a microdose of a gram or 2 a day is not a good supplement for climbers. You would not want a creatine load like a football player or bodybuilder would, where you want to get the cells to swell and you want the muscles to get bigger and heavier. If you're playing football, that's a good thing. If you're a sprinter doing a 10-second sprint, potentially that's a good thing. If you're a bodybuilder, it's a good thing. But rock climber, no, you don't want a creatine load. A microdose could be helpful, especially if you're a vegan who doesn't get creatine in their diet from red meat. And same thing with beta-alanine. It could be more beneficial for a vegan or vegetarian athlete than for a regular meat eater. Okay, let's move on here. Herr Hurst, yes. I speak a little German. I am of Swiss-German heritage, but our family has been here for many generations. And though I took German a long time ago in school, I am certainly not fluent. I can swear in German, Scheiße, and a few other things. But thankfully, all of my German friends speak excellent English. And so it's a place I love to travel and climb at over in Germany. Hopefully we can do that in 2021 if we get this vaccine ramped up. Yeah, there you go. I think that's referring back to the sewing machine leg question. Okay, what's the ideal time or break between a morning 7:53 max hangboard session and climbing later in the day? 6 hours, I think, is a good number. It could be less than that. I'm not saying it would be a bad thing if it was only 4 hours apart. It could be as much as 8 hours apart if you're doing one like in the morning before you go to school or work, and then one in the evening. It could be 8 or 10 hours. But after about 6 hours, the signaling has played out, and there'll be less or no interference of the two workouts. And you would want to consume protein after that first workout and kind of jumpstart the recovery process. And your second workout of the day, although you won't need as rigorous of a warm-up, you still need to do a warm-up, because that 4 to 8 hour break between sessions, your body will cool down and you'll want to do a bit of a warm-up once again. But yeah, I'm a big advocate, if you've read my work or listened to a lot of these training cafes or my podcast, that elite climbers should be doing some 2-a-day training. It's just to get the volume, to build the capacity. You need to start doing double workouts, but having them split apart so they don't interfere with each other. And again, that's not something a beginner wants to rush into, but if you're an elite level climber, I think you probably need to be doing, especially in your off season, 2 workouts per day, at least twice a week that you double up, maybe even 3 times or 4 times a week that you double up. Again, that's an extreme schedule for a really highly conditioned athlete with strong connective tissues and excellent nutritional and sleep practices. Okay, any suggestions for projecting an outdoor route known for stemming? Can we train for that? Well, I mean, I guess if you could get on some boulders in the gym, and they wouldn't have to even be boulder routes that are set, with tape or with colored holds, but just get yourself into some dihedral here. I just see the video blinking in and out. Hopefully we are back here live. But in any case, some people might say, well, do more stretching. That'll help you with stemming. And yeah, that's, doing mobility work is good, but you need to be able to get yourself into those positions when you're on the route. And so it does, along with doing some perhaps static stretching, especially in the evening, I think is the best time to do that. To do dynamic stretching and to actually be doing stemming activates the muscles that get you into those positions. And so you want to train stemming by stemming. And although it can't be route specific without getting on the route, just again, getting into the gym and forcing yourself. And again, forget the routes that are set at the gym or on your home wall, but just, get somewhere where you can stem between, 2 kind of opposing or, angling walls, and practice lifting your legs up and stretching actively while stemming. And I think that's, along with some, static stretching, a good strategy to do it at least, 2 or 3 days a week, to work through those positions and train those muscles that help you get into the stem position. So again, think of stretching as not being enough to improve your stemming. You need to actually be training the muscles that move you into those stem positions. Okay. Okay, yeah, my training for climbing book and also on my website, there are some templates for programs, and I kind of have a beginner, intermediate, and advanced template, which is just a starting point for designing your programs. And it's tough to say who is a beginner and who is an accomplished or intermediate climber based on number of years or even grade, because those just aren't precise ways to do it. It would be best to have a coach kind of look at you and evaluate where you're at and what's appropriate. But the best I can do in a book is to throw some grades out there. So he's saying he climbs V6 and 12, but haven't been even climbing a year yet. So he, based on the year, you would say, well, you're still a beginner if you've only been climbing 1 year, but yet I do look at V6 and 12A as being more of an accomplished or intermediate stage climber. And then as you get more to like 13A or V8 or 9 being more, into that advanced range, which some people can get there in just a year or two. So there is kind of a mismatch there. And here's the problem. If you've only been climbing a year or two, your connective tissues, whether it's in your fingers, your shoulders, your elbows, are still adapting to the unique stresses of climbing. It takes several years for those connective tissues, laying down collagen. Connective tissue adaptations are very slow compared to muscles. And so if you are one of these people that really ramps up an ability quickly and develops strength quickly, your strength and your skills become stronger and better than your connective tissues. And that's when you develop injuries. And so you need to be careful. Someone like you that ramps up very, very quickly. Be very, very self-aware of what you're doing and don't rush onto the campus board, let's say. And so for you, I would say you can start easing into some of those intermediate or accomplished climber training activities like hangboarding, but do so with caution. Don't go all in. Again, that's another common trait of people who get injured climbing is the ones that just go all in on a new training practice. Like they discover the system wall and all of a sudden they're system walling 4 days a week. Or they discover the fingerboard or the campus board and all of a sudden they're doing that 3 or 4 days per week. Maybe they install one in their home and they can't help themselves, but get on it 3 or 4 days per week. And that is how injuries result very oftentimes, is too fast of a ramp up. Just like the person who gets the bug for running, they buy a pair of running shoes and they go from being not a runner to running 6 days a week. And inevitably a month later, they have shin splints or plantar fasciitis or, some other issue that develops in their leg. You add training, ramp it up too fast, the connective tissues don't have time to catch up, injury results. And so you're kind of one of those unique cases that I say, ease into intermediate training, but not, do so cautiously. Okay, hangboard question. Dave McLeod, who's a really good veteran coach out of Great Britain, recommends open grip. Lattice recommends half crimp grip. Do you suggest a combination of both? And does it make sense to rely on one? No, it does not make sense to rely on one. And I think there could be some confusion here. What all of these coaches, including myself, insist on and agree on is there should be no closed crimp training. Closed crimp is where you're crimping with a thumb on top, and it puts both your DIP and PIP joint in the position of highest stress when you're doing that closed crimp. Now, you may do that when you're on a route. It might be needed. It might be helpful and smart to do on a route. But you don't want to train in the most stressful position. The least stressful position to train is open hand. And that's what you're saying McLeod recommends you do most of your training with. And that makes good sense. It would put you at the lowest risk of injury. But I don't think he would say you should do all of your training that way, because that in-between position, what you might call a half crimp, or even when you crimp with the middle two, but open with the end two, like that, that is what most people refer to as a half crimp, because you're kind of half crimp and half open. You do want to do some training in this half crimp or this open crimp, because the muscles, there's several muscles in your forearms, one that flexes the DIP joint and one that flexes the PIP joint. And if you just open hand, then you don't fully recruit and train the flexor digitorum profundus, which is what flexes the DIP joint. And when you're crimping on a small hold, it's the flexor digitorum profundus that is doing most of the work. And so if you only train open hand, you train all the muscles moderately. But if you do some training in the half crimp or in the open crimp, then you call that flexor digitorum profundus muscle more into play and train it more specifically, which you will need when you get on a route and do crimping. And so if you just open crimp, you will underperform when you crimp. And so the bottom line is you need to train all the different positions except for closed crimp with the thumb lock. You don't want to train that. So when you're doing max hangs, maybe do one set in each of, one set at half crimp, one set at open crimp, one set at open hand or drag. And if you did one set of each or 2 or 3 sets of each, would be a pretty good way to train max strength. And then when you're doing repeaters, maybe you do a set at half crimp, a set at open crimp, a set at open hand. And you could also do some at different pocket grips, which are open hand grips as well, and train them all. And I think there's good consensus among coaches and also researchers that you need to train all of the grips. Though if you have an injury history and you're working back into training, just doing open-handed training would be the place to start, rather than going into the, returning immediately to the half crimp. Okay. Talking about progression, when's the right time to push the grade of sport climbing? What do you think about a more traditional pyramid approach, maybe trying to push up with the right candidate route? Yeah, so I've been a big advocate. I wrote a book many years ago called How to Climb 512. It's still out there as a 3rd edition, and there's many, numerous foreign translations. And in that book, I presented a pyramid idea where you want to build a pyramid. Let's say you're trying to push to 13A. So 13A is the top of the pyramid. You want to build a track record of sending a lot of 12As, a few or several 12Bs, a couple of 12Cs, and a 12D, and then you would build the pyramid. Always trying to build a foundation on which to build those project routes. People that spend all their time projecting don't have a pyramid. They have like a tower where they send a couple of 12As, a couple of 12Bs, a couple of 12Cs, and then they're trying to project 12D or 13A, but they haven't built the foundation. They're overreaching, you might say. And although they might send that 13A, they haven't developed themselves really as a climber. The expertise you get with sending a lot of routes just below your limit. So for technique, for mental training, and even to some degree for conditioning, and just becoming an effective route climber, you want to build that pyramid. And that's why I recommend when you're out route climbing to spend 80% of your time building the pyramid, climbing 1 or 2 or 3 letters below your limit, sending routes in on-site or 1 or 2 goes, and only 20% of your time projecting where you're at your limit or somewhere around your limit, one grade either side. And I guess he's asking, when is the right time to try to push to the next level, that top of the pyramid, to do a PR ascent. And I think when you're pushing your limit, it's good to look for low-hanging fruit in the form of routes that inspire you, routes that fit your kind of favorite type of climbing. If you're a strong boulderer, you might look for a route that has, that you're told has a bouldery crux. So it's not like a long endurance route, which you're probably not good at if you're a boulderer. You want to look for a route that has kind of a one move wonder or a few hard moves as the crux. Or vice versa. If you're a really good endurance resistance type climber, you might look for that next level route that has, quote, no hard moves, but just has a lot of sustained climbing. So looking for a route that fits your skill set and your strength and what you're confident in, you find that route, it's a good one to drop your rope at the bottom of and begin working on as a next level project. Whereas if you can't ignore routes that you're not good at, routes that are maybe scary to you or that have a type of move, maybe an overhang or something or a crack that, scares you or you're not confident in, well, those are good routes to pick to build your foundation. If your project level is 13A, maybe you want to seek out some 12As or 12Bs that are of the type that you're not confident in, because those are the types of routes that you shouldn't avoid. Those are the types of routes you should seek out and embrace because they will make you a better climber. They will broaden your skill set, build confidence. And yes, your initial attempt or two might be scary. You might feel like a bumbly because you're hanging on a 12A and you don't normally hang on 12As or whatever the grade. You get the idea that you have to check your ego at the door and not be afraid to look like a bumbly by getting on a route that's not in your wheelhouse. And by doing that, kind of treating it as a bitter pill you have to take every now and then, it will make you a better climber. And that's something that even this old guy tries to do every now and then, is get on something that isn't quite my type of route. And, I can still improve as a climber. It's a never-ending process. But when you're pushing the limits, look for something that's kind of in your wheelhouse and that really excites you. I think that's the best strategy. Okay, I'm coming up on I'm at an hour here, so it might be time. Do you want me to wrap this up or should I keep going? The day is slipping by here. Okay, another question about half crimp recruitment on 10 millimeter. My weighted pull-ups are... Okay, I'm not exactly sure what the question is here. Maybe you're just giving me your metrics here. I mean, it sounds like you're quite strong, Joseph. So, okay. Practice, question about clipping while leading. Yeah, clipping is something that comes with time and, making thousands of clips. And people do set up a few draws on their home wall. I did that when my kids were learning to lead, when they were like 7 years old. I put some bolts into the wall and put the draw on, and just, we weren't belaying or anything because it was just a home wall, but they could pull the rope and practice clipping and how to use their fingers. And, it's a dexterity thing. When they were kids with small hands, it was tough working with a big beaner. So I kind of had some smaller sport beaners. Now they have adult hands and they clip as good as anybody and can do it lightning fast. And so, it's a skill and you just have to clip a lot. If you can go to climbing gyms or just outdoors and, trust that with doing hundreds of sport routes, you'll get the process down pretty well. Okay, what's a good alternative to campus training that is safe for youth climbers? Yeah, I mean, it's a sticky subject because, youth climbers, especially those going through the growth spurt, really have to be careful for those growth plate fractures that I've talked a lot about. And a lot of elite level kid climbers get them, especially the ones that go through a dramatic growth spurt. They get painful knuckles and they can break a growth plate. And if they're not attended to, or if climbing isn't stopped for a period of months, you can grow a crooked finger and be disfigured for life. So it's not a trivial injury, even though it is sometimes treated as that. Some coaches say as a safe rule, just no hangboard, no campus board for youth climbers. And I would say definitely not for climbers going through their growth spurt that have any pain in their knuckles, because you develop a subtle pain before you actually break the growth plate. So at the first sign of that subtle pain, you got to cut back or actually eliminate hangboard and campus board. Whereas an 11-year-old who hasn't reached the growth spurt yet, if they're an advanced climber, could dabble on a campus board, could hang a little bit on a hangboard, and it wouldn't be a bad thing. But as they enter the growth spurt, or as they develop even the first sign of pain, you have to stop that and actually cut back on max bouldering as well, because the crimping on boulder problems is just as bad as the crimping on a hangboard, and the lunging on a boulder problem between small holds is just as bad as the lunging between a campus board. So you need to actually reduce exposure to those types of movements on a climbing wall as well. So safe alternatives, well, doing pull-ups on a bar quickly would develop some power that would be similar to what you develop on a campus board. And I think just climbing, kids need to climb and be instructed on technique. I think doing less bouldering and more route climbing is a good thing for youth climbers, because the bouldering is harder. You grab smaller holds and you do the same hard move over and over again when you're trying a hard boulder route. And that can be potentially in scale. Yeah, I mean, kettlebells can be useful. I know some climbers who use them. I am not a kettlebell trainer, so I really can't give you any advice in that. I know Chris Hampton has done some of that and has done some instruction on that. You might reach out to him. Yeah, Jan is 45 years old, started climbing 10 years ago, so in his 30s. And you can progress and train to progress for many years to come. Obviously, injury is something you have to watch out for, and pick and choose your routes to avoid things that feel injurious. But you can climb hard in your 40s, 50s, and even 60s. So there's a lot of opportunity there to improve, but seek mastery, not to become Alex Megos strong. That is only a dream thing for most of us. He's got everything going for him in terms of began climbing at a young age, and certainly has some genetic predisposition and excellent coaching. His coaches of 15 years, he's had 2 excellent coaches working with him. And so for somebody getting into climbing midlife, trying to model what they see the teenagers doing would often be a big mistake. You need to have a program that's appropriate for you. And so the approach to climbing training as you get older is, again, think about protecting your shoulders. You would want to be doing twice a week training of scapular stabilizers and rotator cuff, in addition to your climbing training. Doing some antagonist work, not a bodybuilder's weightlifting program, but climbing specific type exercises, as we've outlined, as most climbing coaches now do a good job communicating. And again, seek mastery in your middle age. While trying to boulder V10 or 8B might seem attractive, doing route climbing, I think, as you become a middle-aged climber, is more sustainable and less likely to result in injury. And so some bouldering certainly is engaging and a good thing for developing strength. But I think for middle-aged climbers, I recommend shifting more towards route climbing. Yeah, so dry tooling, ice climbing, feeling some inner elbow tendinosis, that's climber's elbow. Yeah, be careful. Warm up doesn't prevent injury, but it does reduce your risk of injury. When you do any new motion, like if you haven't done dry tooling since last winter and you go and do your first session, if it's too long of a session because you're over enthusiastic, that can touch off kind of an acute inflammation that could turn into tendinopathy. And so whenever you return or reintroduce training, you can't go into the mindset that you're going to begin or restart it where you left it off last winter. You need to ease back into it over the course of several workouts. And so perhaps you just went and did too much of it in your first dry tooling session, or maybe I'm reading that into your question, but I assume it's early winter. Maybe you just started it. And so take that as a warning sign. Do stretching every day, even on your rest days. You want to do some stretching of your finger flexors and extensors, stretch both sides, and be careful, ease back into your workouts, maybe 3 days a week, 2 days a week. And hopefully you can dodge the bullet here. So let's move on. I think usually people have much more strength and fitness compared to their climbing grade. Do you agree with that? Yeah, I do agree with that. I think I tell my own sons, who I've been training since they could, walk. I tell both my sons that they are already strong enough to climb the next grade. Cameron's done several 9As, 514Ds over the last 2 seasons. He's definitely strong enough to climb 15A. My son Jonathan just did his first 14C this season. He's strong enough to do 14D. So while they are training this winter to get stronger, I'm trying to communicate to them that it's not what's going to get them the next grade. They already have the strength for that. And I think many climbers do if they train consistently. It's their brain that's holding them back. It's not enough opportunity climbing, not, getting on enough routes, maybe getting on the wrong routes. You get bogged down on a project. You don't get better doing projects or failing on projects, let's say. It doesn't make you a better climber as much as climbing successfully some routes a few grades below your project. That's why I recommend that pyramid approach. You want to be sending routes. That makes you a better climber. Hanging on a rope, bolt to bolt, doesn't really make you a better climber. It's a process to doing hard routes, but it doesn't really make you a better climber. And so, yeah, I would agree with you generally in that sense that most people are already strong enough for the next grade, but they're wasting energy through energy leaks, through tension. I mean, that's why, again, climbing mastery is about reducing those energy leaks, becoming more effective in their climbing, becoming more efficient in their movement. I wrote a whole book called Maximum Climbing, which is about sealing off those energy links through developing climbing mastery. And so I would encourage you to check out that book sometime. Would I recommend collagen for vegetarians? Well, if you're a true vegan, you can't consume collagen because hydrolyzed collagen is a product derived from bovine. It's an animal-based product, just like milk or cheese or meat is. So if you're a vegan, there is no collagen to consume. Now, PhysiVantage, my company, we developed a product last year called PowerPlex, which is a plant protein. It's 100% plant protein. We blended several different protein sources, peas and brown rice. We added glycine to build a protein that has both high in the branched chain amino acids, which are ideal for muscle recovery, but also we increased glycine, which is a collagen-specific amino acid, so that you could kind of call it a collagen alternative for vegan athletes. It's not collagen. It's not a replacement for collagen. There is none for vegan athletes, but it would be the next best thing. Vegans often are short on critical amino acids, both the collagen specific and the branched chain amino acids, unless they combine plant protein sources perfectly, or consume egg and milk. If they're that type of vegetarian, then they are doing better on the protein front. But shortage on protein, whether you're vegan or non-vegan, if you're not getting enough protein and you're training hard, you're blunting your muscle recovery, and you're also potentially weakening your connective tissues and setting the stage for connective tissue injury. And so protein is important regardless of where it comes from in your diet. Question about my sauna. It's infrared. Yeah, it's a dry sauna. Would it be wise to start hangboard training? Climber that just began 8 months ago, trying to break into the 512 range at Red River Gorge. So far, I've read pointed 11C. So yeah, Dan, you're an example of that person who has progressed very, very quickly at climbing. And in 8 months, you're approaching 12A, which is awesome. However, it also puts you in this class of people that I discussed that potentially could be at risk for overuse injury, connective tissue injuries, because you're getting stronger and more able to climb on smaller holds. So I'd be very cautious. I'm not going to say that dabbling on a hangboard would be a bad thing. I certainly wouldn't do any extensive training. I wouldn't do any training on monos. I wouldn't do any training on 2-finger pockets on a hangboard. I wouldn't do any weighted training. I would use comfortable holds that are maybe first pad or open hand slopers, and toy around on it, but not do extensive training just yet. I would still focus on climbing 3 days per week and maybe training your larger muscles like your pull-up muscles, and also for sure doing the antagonist and rotator cuff and scapular stabilizer training, because you want to get those muscles, those supporting structure muscles, ramped up so that next season you can push into maybe 12A, 12B and do so successfully without getting injured. Okay, yes, I would agree with you, Dan. Your ability to hang on small holds, again, when you hang on that first pad hold, it's that flexor digitorum profundus that flexes that joint. That's a deep forearm flexor muscle that, if you're hanging on big holds, doesn't get trained so well. It gets most targeting, that removes 40 pounds from your body. I love, if you're doing that, good job. That is the way you want to train that. And maybe over time you can reduce to 30 pounds to 20 pounds and eventually get down to body weight hangs on that 20. But I would also ask you to consider the denominator of strength to weight ratio. And that is that 190 pounds at 6 feet tall. Now, I don't know, you might have a larger structure genetically, that might be your body type of your family. But I would think, is it possible you could train in a way by adjusting diet and maybe adding some running to your program that you could drop down to 190 pounds? That would instantly make you stronger on that 20 millimeter edge. And so I would ask you long-term to think about the numerator and the denominator both, because if you could drop 10 or 20 pounds, on that denominator, your strength to weight ratio goes up quickly. And you need to do it healthfully. And maybe with your genetic type, it's not possible to drop 20, but maybe it is possible to drop 10. And I would say to not obsess on crimp training on a hangboard. That could get you injured. But in addition to your climbing a couple days a week, if you did some hangboard training, and some aerobic training, again, thinking about losing some body mass, that might be a good thing. Okay, I do want to wrap this up here because I got a lot of work to get done here today. People are here saying, keep going. Been listening to your podcast for a couple years. Thank you for the inspiration. I don't know what that is. I'll have to look that up and Google it and get back to you. There's a lot of training technology out there that might seem like a good idea, that you might be able to adopt it to climbing, but then upon further study, maybe it's kind of a red herring. And you have to be careful of that shiny object that gets your attention and you get enamored of it and you think it's a game changer. And it's not. It's a wrong turn sometimes. I'll have to look into that, Daniel, and get back to you. Yeah, I would say 2 times a week for pinch training, 5 or 6 sets per hand would be more than enough, especially if you're combining it with bouldering and climbing. Remember, when you're pinch training, I am a big believer that you want to be training wide pinch, not narrow pinch. When you do narrow pinch, it becomes a crimp training exercise, okay, because you're pinching like that. And if you wanted to do 1 set narrow, you could do that. But I think the real value is in wide pinch training, standing up, not on a hangboard pinching, but standing up using pinch blocks with your, something that is 4, 5, even if you can do it 6 inches apart. And you only want to be training that last joint of your thumb. Don't go down on the pinch block with both pads, but only the first pad. Be disciplined on that, because if you want it to be effective pinch training, what you're really after is training the thumb. Okay, and so twice a week, I only do 2 or 3 sets, to be honest, of pinching, and I get results from that. 5 or 6 sets might be more than you need, but you can play around with that and keep some written records and see. I would actually cut back to 3 or 4 sets and see if you can get positive results out of that before doing more than that. Okay, and I think I'm going to wrap things up here. It's hard for me to scroll down here and see. There's a couple follow-up questions that are hard for me to refresh my memory on what the initial, okay, I guess I can remember what Daniel was talking about here. It's a pull-up bar with a spinning axle. So I guess one that rolls in your hands. One of those pull-up bars that kind of keeps wanting you to spit off. And so that does engage your wrist flexors more. I've been on those bars, and it does engage your wrist flexors here. And I think there could be some benefit in training with that. I can't really give you a protocol per se. There's other ways to train those wrist flexors as well. And I might do a demonstration video sometime soon to discuss that. Being able to stabilize your wrist, both with the wrist extensors and the wrist flexors, being able to manipulate your wrist position and keep it firm in different positions is essential for a strong finger grip. Just like a strong shoulder is essential for a strong finger grip. And so kind of, I guess, as a parting comment here, sometimes your inability to get stronger finger grip, let's say finger training or bouldering, it's not that you can't train up your finger flexor muscles anymore. It's that your brain is shutting them down because it senses instability in your wrist or instability in your shoulder. And if you have, as you fatigue, as your postural muscles, your scapular stabilizers, your various shoulder muscles that provide stability, your wrist extensors and flexors, as those muscles fatigue and you lose instability, your brain starts shutting down your fingers and you can't hold on to holds that you think you should be able to hold on to. And so I kind of sum up that idea that stronger shoulders equals stronger fingers, and stronger wrist flexors and extensors equals stronger fingers. And if all you do is train in a hangboard, you develop stronger fingers. Those controlling muscles in your forearm get stronger. but being able to use them on the rock requires that you maintain proper posture. And if you can't, your brain won't allow you to realize or express the force, the peak force. And so, again, you need to do the right types of training for your shoulders and for your wrist extensors. But there's good research that has shown that as you lose stability of wrist, let's say, position, you lose ability to express force with your fingers. And so that's why, fingerboard training is, I believe, an essential part of every serious climber's program, but it's not the end all. You need to be doing other things along with it. And with that, I think it's time this could be record length here, almost an hour and a half. Let's sip cold coffee together, and we will call it a day for this episode of Training Cafe. I really hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate your feedback. I appreciate you sharing the link to this Training Cafe with your friends on your Facebook, your Instagram. Share it around, spread the wealth, and spread the spirit of climbing and coffee. And I'll see you again in about 2 weeks. Take care.